let's talk about kites. So kites are quadrilaterals that have kind of a special feature. They are that two consecutive sides or sides that are touching are congruent. So notice that none of these sides happen to be parallel, but these two sides are congruent, and these two sides are congruent, the sides that are touching each other. We also get that this line that cuts our kite in half into two isosceles triangles, it is also bisected by a perpendicular bisector because we have a right angle. Okay, let's use that information to solve some problems. It says which pairs of angles must be congruent in the kite shown below. Let's go back to this for a second. I don't see any relationship in between this angle and this angle, but I see that these are actually marked congruent. So, which two are congruent here? These, the angles that are in between the two consecutive sides that are non-congruent. So A and R. Okay, let's look at this one. It gives us the measures of all the angles, and then we're going to try and solve for y. Let's go ahead and label things. Oops. Angle Z is supposed to be 140. 140 degrees. Angle C is supposed to be 4y minus 40. Angle K is supposed to be 100. And angle V is supposed to be 5x minus 5. We're going to solve for these variables. Now, my first thought is, well, according to the last problem, 5x minus 5 equals 4y minus 40. But here we have one equation and two variables. So we can't solve this. So we need to come up with a different strategy. Well, if these two things are the same, could I replace one of them with the other? Like instead, could I just write, hey, this is 5x minus 5 as well? Well, I sure can. And then do I have a quadrilateral? Yes. Now quadrilaterals add up to 360 on the inside with their interior angles. So 5x minus 5 plus 140 plus 100 plus another 5x minus 5 equals 360 degrees. Let's go ahead and combine like terms. We have 5x and 5x, so that is 10x, and we have negative 5 and 140 and 100 and another negative 5, so that is 230 equals 360. So I'll minus 230 from each side. And I could have chosen to do this with y instead of x. I just happened to choose x at random, and I would end up finding y first, and that's okay. All right, let's divide by 10. Now I know x is now equal to 13. Now, could I use that exact same strategy where I used a whole big formula in order to solve for y? I sure could. But I want to use smaller numbers because I just like smaller numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take that 5x minus 5, and I'm going to plug in the 13. 5x minus 5x is now 5 times 13 minus 5, which is 65 minus 5, which is 60. I now know this is a 60-degree angle. And I said these two sides, these two angles were congruent, which means that 60 degrees is equal to 4y minus 40. So let's add 40 to each side. Let's give me 100 equals 4y. So I'll divide by 4. y is equal to 25. Could have set up a whole big formula to solve for y, but I would rather substitute in my x value, get the angle measure, and solve a much smaller formula. Let's talk about this one. This one, it says, determine the value of the requested variables and or angles for the kite shown below. Okay, so let's label things. The measure of angle P is 2x plus 70. The measure of angle W is, oops, y plus 65. The measure of angle C is 118. And the measure of angle A is 46. Okay, hey, this is nice because these two opposing sides here, we've got a variable and a number. So I can just say, hey, 2x plus 70 equals 118. How considerate is that? Now we can just solve for x. By subtracting 70, we're going to get 2x is equal to 48. Apologize. We'll divide by 2 on each side. And we'll get that x is equal to 24. Okay, now here comes the problem with solving for y. We don't know that y is congruent to 46. In fact, I'd be willing to bet that it's not. But we do know that this is 118 degrees. And this whole shape is a quadrilateral, so it'll add up to 360. So we can say y plus 65 plus 118 plus 118 plus 46 is equal to 360. So let's combine some like terms here, and that'll give us 65 plus 118 plus 118 plus 46. Which is 347 equals 360. Let's minus 347 from each side. Those will cancel over here, and y is going to be equal to 13. Let's talk about this kite. The kite below, it tells us that BS is 20. It also tells us that HB, from H to B, this distance is 13. And it wants us to find HS, which I'll just mark as X for now. Now, if you remember from our original picture, the diagonals intersect at a right angle here. So what I actually have here is a right triangle inside of my kite, and I can use Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. In this case, X is a leg, so I'll say 13 squared plus X squared equals 20 squared. Oops, sorry, 20 squared. And now I just need to do some arithmetic. 13 squared is 169 plus X squared equals 20 squared, which is 400. Let's minus 169 from each side. This is going to give me that X squared is equal to 231. In order to get rid of that squared, I need to take the square root, and X is going to be equal to 15.198, blah, 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 blah. It says round to the nearest tenths place, so the 1, will the 9 make the 1 round up or stay the same? And it'll make it round up. So I'm going to write my final answer as 15.2. Let's look at this one. It says from S to G, that's 6. And it says from J to G, that is 5. And from S to M is 19. And it says find the perimeter of the kite. So I know that this is also 19 because those two are marked congruent. But I need to find this side. And once I find that side, I know I'll have my other missing side, and I can add all 4 of those sides up, and I'll have my perimeter. Again, I have a right triangle right here. So I'm going to use the Pythagorean theorem. In this case, the x is the hypotenuse, so 5 squared plus 6 squared equals x squared. So that'll give me 25 plus 36 equals x squared. 25 plus 36 is 61. Again, what I need to do is I need to take the square root of both sides in order to solve. So that's going to give me 7.8102 such and such and such and such for my value of x. So I'm going to have 2 of those. Now, I'm not going to round it off right now. I don't want to round off until the very end. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to store that in my calculator. And I'm just going to plug into my calculator 2 times my x value plus 19 in order to give me my perimeter. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because I don't want to come across some kind of rounding mistake, which can often happen in problems like this. In this case, I don't think I really would have had too much trouble, but you never know. All right, tenths place. So tenths place is this digit. Will the 2 make the 6 round up or stay the same? And it'll make it stay the same. Now, one really important thing is imagine if this had been 7.83, then the rounding issue would have actually come into play. So it's really important to always be double checking yourself. Always just store the value and don't round until the very end. So I know my answer here in this case is going to be 53.6. Let's do one final example. We have from S to C is 18. We have from J to H, overlapping here, so I'm going to switch colors, is 7. And it feels odd not to switch colors. MC, oh, that's from here to here. That's 18. Okay, we want to find the perimeter. Again, I know this is 18. Now, if I want to use Pythagorean theorem, well, that means I need to have a right triangle that I know something about. I'm going to go ahead and use this right triangle, but there's an issue. We know from S to C is 18, so we actually need to divide that by 2 in order to get this, because remember that the side that separates the isosceles triangles within a kite is bisected. So now we can use 9 squared plus 7 squared equals c squared in order to solve for our missing side. So that's 81 plus 49 equals c squared. 81 plus 49 is 130 equals c squared. Again, I'm going to take the square root of each side, and the square root of 130 is 11.4017 blah, 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 blah. I'm just going to store it again. So I know that's my C value. So I'll have 2 of those plus 18 plus 18. That's going to give me my perimeter. And that is going to give me 58.803. If we're rounding to the nearest 10th place, will the 0 make the 8 round up or stay the same? It'll stay the same. So it'll be 58.8. That is all we have to talk about for kites.